Hi everyone, my name is Elizabeth. I'm 17 years old and I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 12. I created this video to help parents of children with type 1 diabetes to know that they aren't alone. I know there's a lot of information out there about managing the technical and medical aspects of diabetes, but what is often not talked about as much is the emotional aspect for both parents and their children. So today, you will hear from a few parents of children with type 1 diabetes talking about their experience and what has helped them through the difficult times.
I'm Kathleen.
And I'm Tony.
My son was diagnosed with diabetes at 18 months old, and then my daughter was diagnosed when she was 18 years old.
The hard part for us was diabetes has been in my family for almost 40 years. My younger brother was diagnosed at age 8. A few years later, I was diagnosed at age 19. So it's something that we're very familiar with, but it was obviously something that we never wanted our children to have to deal with.
We found support, of course, with our family members, but for an organization, we found a lot of support with Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. They were a tremendous support to us because it became a community with other people who were experiencing the same situation, having young children diagnosed with diabetes.
You know, we all have our own stories as to how diabetes came into our lives. The powerful thing about JDRF is that regardless of your story, there is that instant connection that everyone can relate to. And you really do feel like you're a part of a community right from the first day.
I think knowing what we know now, what we have done differently would be to give a little more autonomy to Anthony when he was diagnosed very young. I think we're in a unique situation because we have diabetes in our family and had been living with it. And when Danielle was diagnosed, we had learned from what we had learned from Anthony to allow them to have successes and have failures and to learn to live with diabetes, to be very open with it, to share their stories with other kids who are recently diagnosed, and to be a part of that community.
Being diagnosed with diabetes is nothing that you ever get over, but it's something that you have to learn to live with. And as parents, we've tried really hard to do that for our kids so that they do live a normal life and they feel normal just like every other kid. And it is possible. We've seen it with AJ since he was 19 months, and today, he's a very healthy, 6 foot, 185 pound 18-year-old getting ready to go to his freshman year in college. And Danielle is a very healthy, very spry 20-year-old getting ready for her junior year in college. So it really is up to us as parents to do our very best to help our children recognize that they have to care for themselves as diabetics, but they can live a normal life if they do all the right things.
I think the advice that I would give to a newly diagnosed child or perhaps a newly diagnosed mom would be to reach out, be a part of a community, know that others are going through the same thing that you're going through. I was fortunate that someone reached out to me right after Anthony was diagnosed, and it made a world of difference.
Hello, my name is Danelle. My daughter Danica was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when she was 13 years old, just as she was about to start 8th grade. She is now 18. She has made it through high school, done exceptionally well. She's continued to stay involved in sports activities such as volleyball. She was in track when she was younger. She was in tennis, and she's been in multiple clubs like Health Occupational, Society of America, and Student Council, and been in many activities throughout the years. What we found Diagnosis Day to be like was we spent 5 hours at the local clinic here in Fargo with the endocrinologist and the diabetes care team, who was amazing with us as far as educating us on a disease we knew nothing about prior to this diagnosis. And my husband, our other daughter, and Danica were all there together, so we were all on the same page from day one, learning about how to help her manage this disease. So we found the most support with her care team and her doctors, along with the best support being other D families and sharing their experience with us, checking in on us, giving us helpful tips, asking us what we're struggling with, giving us experiences they've already gone through as a guide, not medical advice, but a guide to help us stay calm and weather this choppy waters sometimes that we are going to have, especially during the steep learning curve of newly diagnosed patients when we're trying to figure things out, trying to understand how this disease that's so individual affects her personally, and then helping educate people around her, such as the school nurses, working with them to help the teachers understand that she has this disease and she has to manage this disease and what all that entails. We've tried very, very hard to encourage her friends and their parents to learn alongside us, not telling them what diabetes is, but helping teach them what we're learning and helping educate them as far as what helps Danica, what they can do to feel empowered, and not afraid to have her around and have her with them during activities, because they understand what they need to do to assist her as well. One of the things that has kept us very, very normal, which is not the case. I don't know if anyone's normal, but involved with sleepovers, involved with mission trips, involved with school field trips, is really identifying people that agree to step up and pay attention to what she needs, help her if she has issues, communicate back with me, if they have questions. So our best advice is help them make connections with other T1Ds to learn things and not feel different from everybody else. Help them make connections with people around them as far as teaching friends, not hiding this disease, not trying to manage it all on your own, enabling them to be advocates for themselves, and don't try to be superwoman, Superman, handling it all on your own. Care, love, be devastated, don't give up. You can make a difference. You can help them thrive. And in today's world, with the technologies we have, it's extremely possible for them to manage this disease and not have long-term health complications from it. And my best advice is, no matter what, trust yourself, trust your situation, trust your child. Do the learning, do the research, but listen to your child in how you make decisions going forward. Involve them in the decisions as they get older, if they're young. My best advice is to also make sure you have a 504 at school. It was a vehicle that was very important for us to be able to open those conversations with teachers. Although there is a system in place that allows the school to notify teachers that there are medical issues, if they don't open those little note icons on each student, they don't see them. So this really allows them to ask questions, have a meeting with us, including Danica, and figuring out what works best for her to help her be successful. So don't be afraid to make those calls. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And we're all here for each other.
Hi, my name is Deb. My daughter was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 5 years ago at the age of 12. As a school nurse, I was already quite familiar with the carb counts, insulin dosing, and injections. But what I was not prepared for was the emotional impact of her diagnosis on me. Waking up multiple times during the night to check her blood sugars as well as to make sure she was breathing, and double and triple checking my insulin calculations at 3 o'clock in the morning proved to be far more stressful than I had anticipated. Feelings of anxiety about normal everyday school activities like lunchtime and field trips were exacerbated by my daughter's tearful stories about her classmates and insensitive comments they made, like, "If you eat that cupcake, you'll get diabetes," or about teachers who did not seem familiar with her diabetes health plan and asked questions like, "So do you need to take insulin?" or "Will you outgrow that someday?" Not having any other students with type 1 diabetes at her school, or even knowing any families with children who had type 1, resulted in feelings of isolation both for my daughter and for our family as a whole. It all felt so overwhelming. There were, however, several things that helped me get through the challenges of that first year. One was having a great healthcare team and having frequent and ongoing communication with them. I remember calling the nurse diabetes educator at 7 o'clock in the morning from Disney World 3 months after diagnosis, asking how do we manage blood sugars that are well over 200 throughout the night, even though we're doing insulin corrections every 3 hours. As important as the medical information was that she gave us, what was even more helpful was her calm reassurance that we could indeed manage the situation and that help was only ever just a phone call away. During our time in the Magic Kingdom, we dealt with many challenges, including unknown carb counts of really delicious desserts, wild variations in activity levels, treating low sugars while waiting in long lines for rides, and trying to keep insulin cool in an unexpected December heat wave where the temperature reached 95 degrees. That trip, however, turned out to be one of the most magical vacations our family has ever had. In fact, it was a turning point in resuming some sense of normalcy. Disney with diabetes gave us all confidence that the disease did not need to limit my daughter's full participation in life. Besides building relationships with our healthcare professionals, making connections with other families who were living with diabetes was immensely helpful. Shortly after diagnosis, we joined a diabetes support group at our local children's hospital. This gave my daughter the chance to meet other children with diabetes, and it gave my husband and me a chance to hear other parents' stories and how they coped with the ups and downs of living with diabetes. It helped all of us to realize that we were not alone and that our feelings and reactions to this new diagnosis were completely normal. We also discovered many valuable resources through JDRF. There were printed and online materials that covered everything from the carb counts of Halloween treats to sample 504 plans that dealt with the academic accommodations at school. There were a variety of online forums as well where parents could simply ask questions and share their stories. JDRF educational and research update opportunities also helped us not only to learn about advancements in the latest diabetes research, but also gave us the chance to meet so many other people impacted by type 1 diabetes. We felt so supported by the interactions we had with people who worked for JDRF, with people who represented companies that made diabetes-related products, and most of all, with other families who, like we, lived with type 1 24/7. After the initial shock of hearing the diagnosis that changes your child's life forever, it can be so easy to get caught up in learning everything that you can about how to take care of your child physically. My advice to parents of newly diagnosed children would be to take care of your own emotional well-being. Look for others who can support you, whether that is someone in your family, someone from your healthcare team, a school nurse, your local chapter of JDRF, or an online forum. Know that you do not have to travel this journey alone. There are many people in the diabetes community who will walk with you. Don't be afraid to reach out to them. With a little help from friends, you can do this.
Hi, I'm Karen. I'm mom to Amelia. Amelia was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when she was 8 months old. She was a baby at the time, but just recently Amelia turned 13 years old. So we've been helping her as parents navigate type 1 diabetes for about 12 and a half years. I'll never forget her diagnosis day. She was very seriously sick. She was in very serious DKA. We had no idea of the warning signs because she was so tiny as an 8-month-old infant. We missed the early warning signs, but we did noticed that she wet through her diapers a couple mornings, and her crib sheet was all wet for 2 mornings, actually. And then it was a Saturday night that she began vomiting. And of course, it was the height of flu season in early April. And the vomiting didn't stop, so we thought we should bring her to the ER one late Saturday night to get help with rehydration. And we were just shocked to find out that it was type 1 diabetes, and that she was very seriously sick in DKA. She was admitted to the PICU at the hospital, and slowly she began to get better as she was introduced to insulin. And we were thrown into education and our new lives, learning about our new lives, our new normal. And as I think back to those days, one of the hardest things, one of the biggest challenges that I faced was actually not knowing how to feed her, because she, at that young age, hadn't had very much for solid food at all. In fact, I was still nursing her, and nobody could tell me how to do that with diabetes. I had no way to measure the quantity that she was taking and count carbs. But then I remembered a wonderful lactation nurse that I met in the hospital when she was born. And I called her, and she recommended that I try a preemie feeding scale. So that's how we did it. Amelia was not a preemie. She was 8 months old and thriving, except we had to measure her foods that way. So I would weigh Amelia as a baby before she ate, before she nursed, and then afterwards. And we were able to get a pretty good idea of the quantity that she ate and could count carbs and dose insulin that way. She started on an insulin pump when she was 9 months old. And she started on a CGM even before that. And the CGMs were pretty new then. The needle was big and it wasn't very accurate, but it still was a huge help to us just to see a number on a screen and have an idea of what her blood sugar might be, because she couldn't verbalize any feelings of being low or being hungry or feeling off in any way. So that's one piece of advice I have for a newly diagnosed parent of a young child is to pursue a CGM as soon as you can, maybe even before you leave the hospital, and then a pump. Those were huge game changers for us, and wonderful tools. And of course, they've gotten better and better over the years. The biggest place that I found support was through community. And I'll never forget doing Amelia's first JDRF 1 walk. She was 1 year old and she just barely learned to walk, and she was toddling around the Mall of America, and we had so many family and friends come and walk with us and support us and extend their support to both Amelia and to us as a family. And I looked over out this ocean of colored t-shirts, and it was just the beginning of getting connected and the most amazing community of type 1 families. And I always say that meeting another family with type 1 is like meeting instant family, because there's just so much you have in common and just a journey that you can share that other people don't understand. But someone with type 1 or a parent of a type 1, it's very familiar, and there's just so much to talk about and connect. And those families have become very dear and some of my best friends. So I really value community and encourage you to get involved as well. We've had many stages with diabetes, and I really think there's different challenges at different ages. But one thing that has grown and helped is our confidence with diabetes. And despite the different challenges that come at different ages, our confidence has grown. In fact, just this morning, Amelia's pump malfunctioned. And that's a bummer. Here we are. It's a holiday weekend, actually, and her pump malfunctioned. But we know exactly what to do. We know exactly the steps to take to help her. And she was a little anxious. Of course, it's going to be a longer time because of the holiday. But our confidence about navigating the disease has grown immensely. And in fact, Amelia said recently herself, as a 13-year-old, she said, "Take care of it with confidence." And I was just so thrilled to hear her say that. And that will be your child too, learning to take care of it with confidence as you model that for them. Is there anything I would have done differently right after diagnosis to help me or my child or our family? The thing that I wish were different, so when Amelia was diagnosed, it was 2008, and I think Facebook was kind of new. At least I wasn't on Facebook yet at that time. And the type 1 diabetes was just, the community online was just emerging. And that's something that's so valuable to me now. I learned so much from reading what other parents post about. I wish I had that in those early stages, especially it would have helped me connect with another mom of an infant or a young child at that time. Now I see other moms of young children connecting, and I am eager to reach out to them. So I would just say get connected, whether it's in person or with that virtual online type 1 community. That would have been the one thing that I wished I would have had in those early days after diagnosis. Recently, another diabetes mom shared this quote with me. It is, "Take your bad thing and make it your best thing that ever happened." And that's something that was said by Jay Hewitt. And that's really my hope and my dream for my child with type 1. And I've been able to see her live that out, that she's taken this thing that's hard and turn it into a stepping stone that helps others, and eventually turn it into that best thing that ever happened, even though there are days that it is still bumpy and it's still challenging. I don't want her to stay there long and live in that discouragement, but rather rise up and help others. And through that, these kids can learn that they can really change the world through having type 1 diabetes. And even at the young age of 12 and 13, Amelia's been offered opportunities to do that. And I know your child can have those as well and be a conqueror as well. So take that bad thing and make it the best thing that ever happened.
Thank you to everyone who shared their stories, and thank you all for watching. If you're looking for more information on coping with diabetes, check the description box below for more resources. Know that you aren't alone. You can do it, and the diabetes community is rooting for you.